She's friendly. She smiles. She laughs. She's warm every time you talk. And because of that, most men completely miss what's actually happening. Just friendly isn't the absence of attraction. It's often the safest place attraction hides. Women don't always flirt when they're interested. Sometimes they calibrate. They observe. They control how much they reveal. And there's a very small moment, 3 to 7 seconds, when that control slips. Not in what she says, but in what she does. In this video, I'll show you how just friendly quietly turns into attraction, the psychological shifts most men overlook. And the one sign that changes everything once you notice it. Stay until the end, because when you finally see this, you won't ask if she's interested anymore. You'll know, and you'll know exactly what not to do next. Most men don't lose attraction because they do something wrong. They lose it because they misread the phase they're in. When a woman is friendly, men tend to jump to one of two extremes. Either they assume there's no attraction at all, or they assume attraction is already guaranteed. Both assumptions are wrong. To understand what just friendly really means, you need to separate three things that most men blend together: friendliness, attraction, and investment. Friendliness is social warmth. It's politeness. It's ease. Attraction is interest. It's curiosity. It's awareness. Investment is cost, time, attention, risk. Here's the rule that changes everything. Friendliness costs nothing. Attraction costs something. Investment costs even more. When a woman is friendly, she's not telling you how she feels about you romantically. She's telling you how safe, relaxed, or socially comfortable she feels around you. That's it. Friendliness is neutral territory. And this is where most men get stuck. They treat friendliness like a verdict instead of a phase. They hear she's just nice and mentally close the door. Or worse, they hear friendliness and rush forward, trying to force clarity. Both reactions collapse attraction, because attraction doesn't appear fully formed. It emerges gradually, and often quietly. Women don't always show interest by becoming more expressive. Sometimes they show it by becoming more selective, more measured, more controlled. This is why just friendly is so misunderstood. To a man, friendliness feels open. To a woman, friendliness is often a buffer, a safe frame where she can observe without committing. At this stage, she's not deciding if she likes you. She's deciding how you handle uncertainty. That's the real test. A Stoic man understands this instinctively. He doesn't need immediate confirmation to stay grounded. He doesn't try to turn friendliness into proof. He lets the interaction breathe. Now let's talk about attraction. Attraction is not behavior. It's orientation. It shows up in attention that lingers a little longer than necessary, in awareness that doesn't turn off when the conversation ends, in subtle adjustments she doesn't consciously plan. Attraction is often quiet because it hasn't yet decided what it's allowed to become. This is why women who feel strong attraction can appear less flirty than women who feel mild interest. Strong attraction carries risk. Risk creates restraint. Flirting is expressive. Attraction is attentive. And attentiveness doesn't always look dramatic. Most men miss attraction because they're looking for performance, compliments, overt signals, clear green lights. But attraction, especially early on, prefers cover. Now here's where investment comes in, and this is critical. Investment is the only phase that removes ambiguity. When a woman invests, she pays a cost. She gives time she didn't have to give. She remembers things she didn't need to remember. She creates space she didn't owe you. Investment is behavior that cannot be explained by politeness alone. And this is where men often self-destruct. They mistake friendliness for investment. They see warmth and assume value. Then they act as if something is owed. More attention, more availability, more reassurance. And the moment they do that, attraction pulls back. Not because she wasn't interested, but because he showed he couldn't hold ambiguity. This is the paradox most men never learn. Attraction grows when you don't demand certainty too early. It dies when you chase clarity before investment appears. When a woman is just friendly, she is often watching one thing very closely: how you behave when nothing is guaranteed. Do you stay calm? Do you stay consistent? Do you remain self-directed? Or do you become performative? Do you over-explain? Do you subtly seek validation? Friendliness is the environment where that observation happens. And if you fail it, attraction never gets the chance to mature. A Stoic man doesn't rush past friendliness. He doesn't treat it as rejection or opportunity. He treats it as neutral ground. He stays present without pushing, engaged without leaning, open without chasing, because he understands something most men don't. If attraction is real, it will move. Not all at once, not loudly, but measurably. And when it moves toward investment. Time becomes intentional. Attention becomes selective. Behavior begins to cost something. Until that happens, everything else is noise. This is why the question, "Is she just friendly?" is the wrong question. The better question is her behavior becoming more costly over time? If the answer is no, stay where you are. If the answer is yes, stay exactly where you are, but pay closer attention. Because the men who win don't rush attraction. They recognize its phases. They respect its timing. And they never confuse comfort with commitment. And once you understand this distinction, the next shifts become impossible to miss. Attraction becomes real the moment it starts costing something. Up to this point, everything could still be explained as friendliness. Smiles are free. Laughter is easy. Conversation doesn't require commitment. But the second a woman begins to give you time and memory, the dynamic shifts, because time and memory are not accidental. Let's start with time. When a woman is just being friendly, time is incidental. You talk when it's convenient. Interactions start and end naturally. There's no resistance when the moment passes. But when attraction is present, time starts to stretch. She finds small reasons to extend the interaction. Right when you're about to leave, there's one more question, one more thought, one more reason to stay. This isn't dramatic. It's subtle. And that subtlety is what makes men dismiss it. They tell themselves, "She probably does this with everyone." But that assumption is usually made without observation. Here's the Stoic rule: never assume universality without comparison. Watch what happens when other people leave. Does she let them go easily, or does she only slow things down with you? Time extension is not about keeping you trapped. It's about resisting separation. When someone is emotionally neutral, separation is easy. When someone is interested, separation creates friction, and friction reveals preference. A Stoic man doesn't jump on this. He doesn't turn it into pressure. He simply notes the pattern, because patterns are everything. 1 extra minute means nothing. 5 consistent moments mean something. Now, let's move to memory, the second, and often more revealing. Investment. Memory is not about intelligence. It's about priority. The human brain does not store everything equally. It filters ruthlessly. Information that feels irrelevant is discarded. Information tied to emotional significance is retained. So when a woman remembers details you barely remember sharing, that's not coincidence. She remembers your schedule, your preferences, small frustrations you mentioned in passing, details that don't serve the conversation but reappear later at the perfect moment. This is not good listening. This is mental allocation, and allocation always follows value. Here's where most men get confused. They think memory means affection. It doesn't. It means attention has been given repeatedly, and repeated attention is the foundation of attraction. The key difference is when and how she recalls these details. If she remembers something immediately after you say it, that's normal. If she remembers it days or weeks later, unprompted, that's investment. Even more telling is context. She brings it up when it's emotionally relevant, when you need encouragement, when the detail creates connection. This tells you something crucial. You're not just occupying her time, you're occupying her mental space. And mental space is far more valuable. A Stoic man doesn't reward this with excitement. He doesn't say, "Wow, you remember everything." He treats it the same way he treats everything else, calmly. Because the moment you overreact to investment, you devalue it. Now, here's the most important insight of this chapter. Time and memory alone do not mean attraction. They mean priority is forming. Priority is the bridge between friendliness and desire. When someone prioritizes you, they begin organizing their internal world around your presence. Their attention doesn't shut off when the interaction ends. It lingers. But this is still a fragile stage. This is where men often ruin everything. They sense priority forming, and they try to secure it. They text more. They push for labels. They look for reassurance. And in doing so, they turn investment into obligation. Obligation kills attraction. A Stoic man understands something different. If someone is giving freely, the correct response is not to take more, it's to remain unchanged. Consistency is what allows investment to deepen. When she gives time and you don't demand more, she feels safe giving again. When she remembers details and you don't cling to it, she invests further. Why? Because she senses emotional stability. And emotional stability is rare. Most men react to attention by leaning. They reveal need without words. A Stoic man reacts by holding position. He lets time accumulate naturally. He lets memory compound quietly. He doesn't rush the moment, because he understands the deeper truth. Attraction doesn't need encouragement at this stage. It needs room, and when room is provided, something else begins to happen. Her attention becomes selective. Her time becomes intentional. Her memory becomes sharper. She's no longer just being friendly. She's choosing. And once that choice begins forming, the next shift is inevitable. She starts syncing herself to you. Not consciously, not strategically, but instinctively. And that's when friendliness stops being neutral and starts becoming alignment. There's a moment when friendliness stops being social and starts becoming alignment. This is not something she decides. It's something her nervous system does. When attraction deepens beyond curiosity, a woman begins to sync with the man she's drawn to. Not because she's trying to impress him, but because her brain is seeking harmony. This is where synchronization begins. You'll notice it first in energy. When you're calm, she softens. When you're playful, she loosens up. When you slow down, she follows. This isn't mimicry. It's regulation. Her emotional state starts adjusting to yours, often within seconds. She doesn't even realize it's happening, but her system is responding. This is the difference between rapport and attraction. Rapport is mutual comfort. Synchronization is directional. In rapport, both people adapt equally. In synchronization, one person sets the tone and the other follows. And this is where many men misunderstand what they're seeing. They think, we just vibe. They think it's coincidence. But coincidence doesn't repeat consistently. When synchronization appears again and again across different settings, moods, and moments, it's no longer random. It's preference. A Stoic man doesn't rush to test this. He doesn't try to manipulate it. He simply remains steady and observes. Because synchronization is fragile. The moment you force it, it breaks. You'll also notice synchronization in movement and posture. You lean back, she leans back shortly after. You slow your gestures, hers become smaller. You lower your voice, hers drops slightly too. These adjustments happen quickly, often without eye contact, almost unconsciously. This is not flattery. This is her nervous system, trying to maintain connection by matching rhythm. Humans sync to what feels safe and significant. That's the key word. Significant. Now, here's where most men ruin this stage. They notice synchronization, and they accelerate. They become more expressive, more animated, more eager, and in doing so, they flip the dynamic. Instead of being the reference point, they become reactive, and synchronization disappears. A Stoic man does the opposite. He stays measured. He doesn't amplify. He doesn't perform. He allows her system to keep syncing naturally. Another place synchronization shows up is in conversation pacing. She pauses when you pause. She listens more carefully when you speak less. She doesn't rush to fill silence if you don't. Silence is a powerful diagnostic here. When someone is merely friendly, silence feels awkward. They rush to fill it. When someone is syncing, silence feels shared. She doesn't escape it. She sits in it with you. That's alignment. And alignment is a quiet form of intimacy. This is also where you'll see synchronization in emotional calibration. If you become serious, she follows. If you shift into reflection, she mirrors that depth. If you pull your attention inward, she leans closer emotionally. She's not copying you. She's responding to your internal state. And that tells you something profound. You're no longer just interacting. You're influencing. Influence at this level is not about control. It's about presence. Now here's the Stoic distinction that matters most. Synchronization is not something to exploit. It's something to respect. The man who tries to use synchronization reveals insecurity. The man who allows it reveals confidence. Because when you're comfortable setting your own rhythm, others naturally align. This is why synchronization only happens when attraction has passed a certain threshold. She wouldn't sync with someone she didn't care about maintaining connection with. And she wouldn't sync with someone she didn't respect emotionally. This stage is subtle and dangerous for impatient men, because it feels like confirmation. And confirmation tempts action, but action here is not required. Restraint is. A Stoic man understands that synchronization is not the green light to escalate aggressively. It's the signal to stay exactly as you are, centered, consistent, unmoved. Because when synchronization is stable, the next shift becomes unavoidable. She begins to protect the alignment. She notices threats to it. She reacts when it's disrupted. She becomes aware of what might pull you away. And that's when friendliness starts losing its cover. Because now, attraction is no longer internal. It becomes defensive. And defense reveals value. There is one sentence that has ended more potential connections than any other. You're such a good friend. I don't want to ruin our friendship. I see you as a friend. Most men hear this and immediately shut down. They assume it's rejection. They pull back. They move on. And sometimes they're right. But more often than men realize, that sentence is not a verdict. It's a defense mechanism. To understand this, you need to understand how attraction interacts with risk. For a woman, admitting attraction carries consequences. If she reveals interest and it's not returned, she risks embarrassment. She risks emotional exposure. She risks losing control of the dynamic. So, instead of revealing desire directly, she often does something far safer. She frames the connection as friendship, not to push you away, but to protect herself. This is what psychologists call preemptive rejection. By labeling you as just a friend, she avoids the possibility of being rejected first. She keeps the upper hand emotionally, and most importantly, she buys herself time to observe how you respond. This is where the real test begins. Because the meaning of that phrase is not found in the words themselves, it's found in what happens after. If the phrase is genuine rejection, behavior will change. Distance increases. Effort drops. Investment fades. She stops extending time. She stops remembering details. She stops syncing with your energy. That's real rejection. But if the phrase is defensive, behavior stays the same or even intensifies. She still finds reasons to be around you. She still invests time and attention. She still mirrors your rhythm. She still reacts when alignment is threatened. In other words, her words say friend, but her behavior says something else entirely. And behavior is where truth lives. This is why Stoic awareness matters so much at this stage. A Stoic man does not argue with labels. He does not try to correct her words. He does not say, "But we're more than friends." That response comes from insecurity. Instead, he watches what she does next. Because women rarely lie with behavior, but they often soften truth with language. Now, here's the mistake most men make. The moment they hear the friend phrase, they emotionally collapse. They either pull away completely or overcompensate by becoming overly agreeable and safe. Both responses destroy attraction. Why? Because attraction at this stage is fragile. She's testing whether you can remain centered when uncertainty appears. Whether your confidence is internal or dependent on verbal confirmation. If you panic, explain, or seek reassurance, you fail the test. Not because she doesn't like you, but because you showed her that ambiguity destabilizes you. A Stoic man responds differently. He doesn't react to the phrase. He continues behaving exactly as he did before, calm, self-directed, unbothered. He lets the dynamic reveal itself. This response does two things simultaneously. First, it removes pressure. She doesn't feel forced to clarify or escalate. Second, it restores polarity. You signal that you don't need a label to remain grounded. And grounding is attractive. Now let's address something important. Not every friend phrase is defensive. Some are genuine boundaries. And the only way to tell the difference is pattern consistency. If she says the phrase and then withdraws, respect it. If she says the phrase and then continues investing, observe. Do not challenge the words. Let time expose the truth. This is where many men rush and ruin everything. They want clarity immediately. They want certainty. They want to know where they stand. But attraction does not grow under interrogation. It grows under stability. The irony is this: the less you react to the friend phrase, the more information you receive, because she relaxes. And when she relaxes, behavior becomes honest. Now here's another critical sign to watch for after that phrase, territorial behavior. If she truly sees you only as a friend, other women won't matter. She won't react. She won't notice. But if she gets quieter when another woman enters the picture, or suddenly more animated, or subtly repositions herself near you, that's not friendship. That's protection. And protection only appears when something feels valuable. Again, a Stoic man does not exploit this. He does not provoke jealousy deliberately. He simply notices reactions when circumstances change naturally. Because real attraction doesn't need to be manufactured. It reveals itself under pressure. The friend phrase is not the end of the story. It's often the moment the story becomes interesting. It's the point where attraction meets fear, and fear chooses defense. Men who understand this don't get discouraged. They get quiet. They stay observant. They stay consistent. They let behavior speak. And behavior always speaks louder than language. If she pulls away after calling you a friend, let her go. If she leans in despite the label, don't rush her. Hold your frame, because when attraction is real, it doesn't disappear because of a sentence. It either retreats completely or it reorganizes itself. And when it reorganizes, it becomes protective, which leads us directly into the next shift. The moment friendliness turns territorial. There is a moment when attraction stops being internal and starts reacting to the outside world. This is where territory appears. Territory is not about control. It's about protection. A woman only becomes territorial around something she values, something she senses she could lose. And that's why this stage is so revealing. When she's truly just friendly, other women don't matter. She doesn't track them. She doesn't react. But when attraction is present, awareness sharpens. You'll notice it when another woman enters the picture. It doesn't have to be obvious flirting. Sometimes it's just attention, laughter, a conversation that holds your focus a second too long. And suddenly, she changes. Her energy shifts. Her tone adjusts. Her behavior recalibrates. Not because she planned it, but because her nervous system detected competition. This is where many men misinterpret what they're seeing. They think jealousy has to look dramatic. It doesn't. Territorial behavior is often subtle. She may become quieter, or she may become more animated. She might move closer physically or pull back slightly to regain control. Both reactions come from the same place. Value recognition. Now here's the key distinction. This is not possessiveness. It's pre-commitment defense. When someone already feels secure, they don't need to protect. But when something feels meaningful yet undefined, the instinct to guard it becomes stronger. That's why women are often more territorial with men they're attracted to but not yet dating than with men they're already with. Uncertainty increases sensitivity, and sensitivity reveals priority. A Stoic man doesn't create these situations intentionally. He doesn't provoke reactions. He doesn't try to make her jealous. That behavior comes from insecurity. Instead, he simply notices what happens when the environment changes naturally. Who does she watch when others speak to you? Does her attention drift or sharpen? Does she reposition herself in the space? Positioning is important. If she places herself between you and another woman, if she finds a reason to interrupt a conversation, if she suddenly remembers something she needs to tell you, that's not coincidence. That's claim signaling. And claim signaling only appears when something feels at risk. Another powerful indicator in this stage is how she uses public attention. This is where inside jokes become relevant. Inside jokes are not just humor. They are boundaries. They create a shared reference that others can't access. A private world that exists even in public. When she brings up inside jokes around other people, she's doing something very specific. She's marking connection. She's saying, without saying it, we share something others don't. And this matters because it's visible. It's no longer hidden in one-on-one moments. It's displayed, not loudly, but clearly enough for others to feel it. This is not accidental. A woman who is only friendly keeps interactions neutral in public. She doesn't blur lines. She doesn't risk misinterpretation. But when attraction deepens, the line becomes less important than the connection. Now, here's where most men sabotage themselves. They notice territorial behavior, and they lean in too hard. They mistake protection for permission. They escalate verbally. They seek reassurance. They try to define the relationship, and in doing so, they destroy the balance. Because territory does not mean readiness. It means value is forming. But vulnerability is still present. A Stoic man understands this. He doesn't reward territorial behavior with urgency. He doesn't punish it with distance. He simply holds his frame. Calm, consistent, unmoved. This response does something powerful. It allows her to feel that her interest is not being exploited, that her emotional exposure is safe, and safety is what allows attraction to move forward. Now let's talk about the most subtle form of territorial signaling: attention, reclaiming. You'll see this when she reasserts connection after it's been disrupted. You're engaged with someone else, and she suddenly uses your name, or references something only you understand, or shifts the conversation in a way that pulls you back. This is not rudeness. It's recalibration. She's restoring alignment, and alignment matters more now than ever. At this stage, friendliness has lost its neutrality. It has become directional. She's no longer just responding to you, she's reacting to threats to the bond. And that tells you something crucial. She is emotionally invested enough to notice loss. But here's the Stoic truth most men never hear. The moment you start acting as if you have her, you lose her. Territorial signals are not an invitation to claim. They are a sign to remain stable, because stability is what turns attraction into trust. And trust is what allows desire to deepen without fear. A man who can hold presence without grasping becomes magnetic at this stage. He doesn't compete. He doesn't assert. He doesn't rush. He lets behavior reveal itself fully. And when it does, one final shift appears. She stops protecting the interaction and starts protecting herself. She becomes more careful with her reactions, more measured with her exposure, more aware of how deeply she's leaning. That is not withdrawal. That is control. And control is the final signal, the one almost no one recognizes, which brings us to the last chapter, the moment when friendly disappears completely, not because it escalates, but because it condenses into restraint. There is one moment where friendliness quietly disappears. It doesn't escalate. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't look dramatic. It lasts 3 to 7 seconds. And if you're not emotionally still enough to notice it, you'll miss it every single time. This moment doesn't happen during flirting. It doesn't happen during comfort. It happens when something shifts unexpectedly, when you're about to leave, when another woman briefly enters the picture, when you say something that subtly challenges the dynamic, when silence appears where conversation usually lives. This is the micro moment, and it reveals everything. Here's what actually happens in that window. First, there is a pause, not an awkward pause, not hesitation, a pause that feels intentional, as if her system briefly stops to recalibrate. Her words slow down, her movement stalls. Her attention narrows. This pause is not conscious. It's biological. Her nervous system has detected a change in emotional gravity. Then comes the second part, eye behavior. Her gaze locks slightly longer than normal. Not wide, not intense, just held. This is not attraction looking for permission. This is attraction checking stability. She's not asking, "Do you like me?" She's asking something deeper. Are you grounded, or are you about to lean? And then comes the third part, the part almost no one notices. Behavior correction. She adjusts. She might soften her tone. She might shift her posture. She might say something unnecessary just to keep the moment alive. Or she might do the opposite, pull back slightly to regain control. This correction is the tell, because at this point, she's no longer reacting to the interaction. She's reacting to herself. She felt the pull. She noticed it. And now she's managing it. This is not flirting. This is not friendliness. This is self-regulation in the presence of desire. And it only happens when attraction has crossed a threshold. Here's the brutal truth. Most men destroy this moment immediately. They feel the shift and they rush to resolve it. They talk more. They joke. They clarify. They escalate verbally. They try to do something. And the moment they do, the spell breaks. Because the micro-moment is not an invitation to act, it's a test of stillness. The man who passes it does nothing different. The man who fails it changes his behavior. That's the entire difference. When you remain still in that window, something powerful happens. Her system completes the loop. She feels attraction, she tests safety, and she finds it. And when attraction feels safe, it deepens. But when you rush, you interrupt that process. You force attraction out of the body and into the mind. And the mind brings doubt. This is why men who do everything right still lose momentum. They don't lose attraction because they lack confidence. They lose it because they can't hold silence. They can't sit in unresolved tension. A Stoic man understands something most men never learn. Tension is not a problem. It's information. And information should be observed, not reacted to. Now here's the most counterintuitive part of all. This micro-moment often looks like pullback. She might become quieter. She might slow communication. She might stop initiating briefly. And weak men interpret this as loss of interest. It's not. It's containment. She's consolidating feeling. She's making sense of what just happened internally. And if you stay grounded, she comes back with more clarity. If you chase, she retreats permanently. This is why friendly disappears here. Not because it escalates, but because it condenses. Friendliness spreads outward. Attraction condenses inward. When a woman feels something real, she becomes more selective with expression, less playful, less loose, more precise. This is the moment where men who rely on validation panic, and men who rely on presence gain leverage. Because presence doesn't need confirmation. Now listen carefully. The correct response in the micro-moment is not silence for effect. It's silence because you're genuinely unbothered. It's staying exactly who you were before the shift. Same tone, Same pace, same center. No leaning forward. No emotional spike. No sudden change. When you do that, you communicate something without words. I'm stable regardless of how you feel. And that is deeply attractive, because it removes pressure. She doesn't feel chased. She doesn't feel exposed. She doesn't feel forced to decide. She feels free to lean at her own pace. And that freedom is what turns interest into desire. This is why the micro moment is everything. It's the dividing line between men who accidentally kill attraction and men who let it mature naturally. The men who miss it keep asking questions. They look for reassurance. They seek labels. The men who see it stop asking. They observe. They wait. They allow. And eventually, behavior speaks clearly. Not because they demanded clarity, but because they didn't interrupt it. That's the paradox. Attraction reveals itself fully only when it's not rushed. So the next time she's just friendly and something feels slightly different, don't look for bigger signs. Look for the pause, the eye lock, the self-correction. That's the moment. That's this. And once you see it, you can't unsee it.